Claire and Milo Talk About Books, episode 4. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about Milo's work as a professional event planner. We're going to be talking a little bit about LitRPGs, audiobooks, and all kinds of other stuff. So welcome back.
Yes, we're going to talk a little bit today about my store's event with Matt Dinniman of Dungeon Crawler Carl fame. This event was this past Thursday, the 5th of September, and we've been planning it for almost half a year, so it was pretty cool to see it come together. And we're gonna take you on the road with us and show you how it all comes together.
Planning events actually takes quite a long time. It's a lot of organizing, it's a lot of negotiating. If you watched the episode where I talked a little bit about planning Silvia Moreno Garcia's event, it was probably, I would say, like 7 months of like emailing back and forth, getting things set up, trying to figure things out. It's a lot, there's a lot that goes into it.
Absolutely, because you have to take into account, well, for Sylvia's event we had to book a venue, and so that's kind of part of it. But another big part of it is working within the author's tour schedule.
Yeah.
And that was a bit of a unique challenge for us on this event, because it so happened that the night of our event, Matt immediately had to fly to Los Angeles.
He did.
The event started at 6, and he had to be on the plane at like 9.
Well, the flight left at 9:30.
So we had to figure out how to communicate the fact that he was not going to be able to stick around and sign for a couple hours. He was going to have to immediately go to the airport, and people were tremendously respectful of his time, which I really admired. It was a huge relief just how cool people were with it.
Yeah, well, so I worked that day, and I literally, I left my job half an hour early at 4 o'clock. I zipped over so I could be there at 4:30 because I had some things I wanted to drop off and I wanted to try and get them signed. So you can see here, here's the ARC. So he very kindly signed, ta-da! So here's the ARC. And he also signed, if you watch the very first episode of Claire and Milo Talk About Books, I said that I really like to get my books personalized. So you can see here, he wrote, he crossed out Carl and he wrote Dungeon Crawler Claire. Which I thought was really cute.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So this is the edition that I got signed, and I also got a signed giveaway for this channel. So you can win a signed copy, and yeah, it was really good. But I was expecting, so my plan was I was going to show up at 4:30, get my things signed, and then I was like, I'll just leave and I'm going to go get dinner and I'll come back at like 5:15, 5:30, whatever. So I got there at 4:30, people were already there. People were already arriving, people were already lining up to do the signing. So I had to get my book signed, and I sat down so I could make sure that I had a seat. And I had to sit in my seat for an hour and a half.
Yeah, it was a full house.
A lot of people showed up. They
did. So usually what it looks like when you're planning an event is that we create an RSVP page so we can have a rough estimate of how many people to set up for. And I usually expect that about 2/3 for an unpaid event. So like people aren't like they haven't paid for a ticket. I usually assume about 2/3 of the people who RSVP'd are going to come.
Yeah.
Now at this one, it seemed like almost everyone who RSVP'd came, so we had probably around 140 people.
It was a lot.
At the event, it ended up being kind of standing room only.
It was.
Which is great. It's a great feeling.
It was fun.
You know,
it was
when
very fun.
You have an event that a lot of people are excited about.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting. It was really unusual. This is something that's really unique, I think, to indie authors that get traditional publishers, which is you had people in that audience that had never read the book. They were just interested in it because they had been to events at the university before. You had people that had read the first book, because I think it came out on August the 20th, around then. So it's been out for
27th, I think.
Okay, so
it was something like
it had been out for like a week before, but people had an opportunity to read it. Some people like me had read the arc of the first book, so this is an arc of the traditional release meant to promote promote Matt and his work. And you also had people there that have read 6 books into the series. And not only that, they were part of writing it, because Matt has a Patreon where he has people, he has like polls, what do you want to happen next? So during the question period, there was people that had never read the series, and people who were so invested in it, had read 6 books, dressed up, they were cosplaying, they had seen him multiple times, they had done fan art, and they were asking questions about like really niche things, like inside jokes, like from the fandom. So it was really unusual, because you literally have people that have read nothing and people that actually helped decide the fate of the book and like where the plot went. So yeah. It was really unusual,
which
but
is
very fun.
It's such a unique experience as part of an author's audience to be part of literally having created the work in that way. And I think the way Matt works that way is really cool. And I honestly, I think that's just such a like brave way to work as an author, because you kind of have to roll with the punches. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and he was talking about that. He was like, yeah, people have chosen some kind of like weird things to do, and I've just been like, yeah, man, I guess we better make this happen. And I just thought that was a lot of fun. But we did have a couple cosplayers, which was awesome. We had someone, I think it was largely facetiously get underwear signed. It was clearly not. It was very funny. It was clearly not his underwear, but he made a point of bringing a sealed package of these like boxer shorts with the hearts that are iconic. It was sanitary. And he literally said, he was like, these are brand new in the package. And I think we'd all like to thank him for clarifying that point. That was so funny. Because otherwise that'd be a little bit gross. But yeah, because in the book, Carl, when he gets like sucked into the world dungeon, and here, we will, you can see, there he is. We will, of course, we will take a little time to kind of explain the book. Yeah, we will. He's wearing like Is he wearing Crocs? He's wearing Crocs and like boxer shorts with hearts on them. Yeah. And then he's just like running around risking his life left, right, and center. So it's like, you know, kind of part of it.
Hey, don't feel bad. I got Doug beside the same towel.
Oh, that's perfect, really. That's great.
Oh my gosh, you guys look amazing! Samantha! No way! You guys look so cool! Thank you!
I hope you like it. Big fan.
Thank you. I love all of your audiobooks.
Oh, thank you.
Let's talk about LitRPG. What's a LitRPG?
LitRPG was not something I knew anything about until this book. So what my understanding is, LitRPG is like fiction writing based heavily in the conventions of RPGs, both like tabletop RPGs and like video games. Yeah. So like characters in this book have like stats, like your D&D character might, and they like level up. They like he kind of carefully constructed like the way this is plotted so that it all makes sense why it's happening this way, but it's like basically it's like watching an RPG happen in book form.
Yeah, so RPG books are not a new thing. They've been around, I think, since the early 80s, maybe even the 70s. So when I was a teenager, even younger, so my dad used to take me to like thrift stores and used bookstores. And I remember buying, so they were called Forgotten Realms, and I did not know that these were Dungeons and Dragons novelizations because they didn't say D&D on them. And they just had like elves, and I think one was called like, one of the first ones, it was Elaine Cunningham. I need to check the title, but it was something called like Elf Shadow, I think was the name of it. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. And so I read a ton of RPG stuff, and I didn't know that's what it was. And actually, my very first like crush on a character, my very first like fictional crush was yeah, and I was in love with him like literally all through high school secretly, was Driz Do'Urden, which is I was so in love with Driss because he has like a panther that's also, it doesn't matter. Anyway,
This is what the love of Claire's life looks like.
This is him.
Kisses.
Hearts, kisses.
I love that.
But like they're, you know, they vary in quality, I will say, but they are a very fun genre. And so Lit RPG specifically is exactly what Milo said. It is books that are written and they're meant to feel like a video game. Characters will level up. The world is a game. And that's really important. The world is a game. It feels like a game. And in Dungeon Crawler Carl, the way that this works really well is like actually, I think part of the reason I liked it so much, and I think I said this in the last video that we made, is that it feels really spiritually similar to Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because in both of those books, within the first few pages, so in Hitchhiker's Guide, the galaxy, well, the Earth is essentially like paved over for like a superhighway. Mm-hmm. And in Dungeon Crawler Carl, like aliens show up and they essentially turn the entire world into a dungeon, a video game dungeon, and it's a game show. So kind of like conventions of this genre are you're in a game, you're essentially in a video game, you are leveling up the way that you would in a video game. So you're getting like loot boxes and items. Often you have stats that will go up, and there are rules in place. So it's meant to feel like a video game experience, but it's a novel. And something that we'll talk about later, actually, that Matt talked a lot about, is that it's this interesting crossroads between video game storytelling and traditional storytelling. And audio and audiobooks are such a huge part of this fan base for the series, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that a little later as well.
Yeah, it's a really cool like multimedia kind of way to tell stories, which is pretty neat. And an interesting thing about this event too is that we ended up one of the kind of important things when you're planning a literary event, and one of my personal favorite things to do, is pairing the author with a conversation partner.
Yes.
If they want that.
Oh my gosh.
It can be a little bit like you have to be really intentional about it to make sure that they're gonna not only like have a conversation that'll be interesting for the audience, but like have a conversation where you can kind of tell that they're hitting it off and having a nice time talking to each other.
Yes.
It's not like they instantly have to be best friends,
No.
but you can you tell when people have chemistry or similar interests, and we were really lucky to get local author Django Wexler in as a conversation partner for Matt. He just had this book out, How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying.
Yeah, so this is a really great one. So I've been to a few events where, actually more than a few, where the conversation partner and the author, like they didn't really have any chemistry, their works weren't very similar. And I think that's I think it's something that Milo's actually really good at, is really finding a good conversation partner. And actually Milo's a really good conversation partner.
Oh, thank you. I love doing it. Well, the truth is, I'm awkward sometimes socially, and I love to try my best not to ever put other people in a socially awkward situation. And I feel like that's secretly like a skill as an event planner, is like if you're a little socially anxious and you're like, well, I don't want to put the author in a socially anxious spot, so I need to make sure they like have similar interests with someone.
Very
so they're not going to be
conscientious.
like, I love chihuahuas. The other guy's like, I love pine trees. This is weird. But Django Wexler also, so he had this out, and he also recently had a D&D Spelljammer book out.
Yeah.
So he's also writing in this kind of like, not exactly the same vibe, but this same kind of like media tie-in, RPG related energy.
Well, this is not a lit RPG. So this is How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying. And actually, if you see right here, ta-da! I got it signed to me. This was an ARC. So this one came out in May, and he gave me this awesome card that has a link to some free short stories. So I haven't checked this out yet. But yeah, Django Wexler is a fantastic author, and we'll talk a little bit more about his work as well. But this is kind of a thematically similar story about a young woman who, she has been defending humanity for 1,000 years as a hero, and she keeps getting killed. And she's reincarnated once again, and she's like, no, I'm not doing this. And so she becomes the Dark Lord.
I'm sick of this.
Yeah, sick of this. Yeah, so this series is also a lot of fun. But just to pivot back to Dungeon Crawler Carl for a minute, so something that's really interesting to me about this series in particular is, so last week we talked with Travis Baldree about Legends and Lattes, and his experience as an indie published author. So like Travis, Matt Dinniman is also an indie published author. He has written other books, standalone. A lot of them have to do with LitRPG. And I'm a little bit late to this party. I have been aware of Dungeon Crawler Carl for a while. I think it started publishing in 2020. And I actually met Matt at NorwestCon, which is a local Seattle-based convention that's for science fiction and fantasy, specifically like novels. And I remember chatting with him specifically because I was like, oh, Princess Donut, like that cat seems really funny. But the covers kind of put me off because they felt, specifically because of the genre, they felt very male-centric, kind of video game.
Yeah, a little bit of a boys club energy.
Yeah, and those are fun.
Gorgeous art though.
Yeah, the art is great, and I think it's really interesting how the original covers really catered to the type of book that it is, and it really pulls in people who already like that. And the new cover art it's still got that video game vibe. So you've got, if you can see here, there's a little trophy hidden in here. There's the little skulls. I'm not sure if you can see this here, of like your health bar. There's all kinds of little like kind of fun Easter eggs hidden on this cover. Donut is dancing over here on his name. It's really cute.
I'm obsessed with the graphic design from day one.
This is
the
beautiful.
graphic design of this cover has been.
And the graphic design of the traditionally published cover is what made me interested in picking it up again and being like, I should give this another go. And I feel like a fool now because this book is great. It's a lot of fun. And I mean, I like video games. I don't play a ton of video games, but when I do, I play RPGs. And I'm familiar with the genre. I really enjoy it. And I just think it's interesting that the original design of the cover and the art that he commissioned originally really reached out to people who already like this. And this type of cover for the traditional release is pulling in people that are more casual like me. It feels more welcoming to like people who don't really read video game books or consume a lot of video games, but it kind of it pulls you in.
It does. You just kind of look at it and you want to know what it's
it's really great.
But it saves some of the original elements too.
Yeah.
Is like in a lot of the original covers, you have like they all feature Carl and Donut
Character
running around.
art.
And on this one, you still have them. You still have them. I mean, it's just more subtle and kind of more like graphically designed out. But you have him. You have his silly boxers. You have her little tiara. It has like
You got a creature on the front. You've got this beautiful cover. It looks like a monster because it's got the eye here. It's got the mouth here.
which I love. So it retains some of the.
It does. It's a lot of fun.
Original charm, which I think is awesome, while combining it with that kind of trad pub like graphic like team energy.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's kind of in contrast with the Legends and Lattes, which honestly nothing really changed from the cover except they made the font less explicitly D&D inspired. And I think that they actually changed the tagline a little bit, but it was still like quite similar marketing. I feel like the marketing for this has been very different.
Yeah.
It's been very different.
You know, I came to this not knowing anything. I had not heard of this book before, which is honestly how I come to most events. So a lot of the time, what happens is a publicist will approach me, send me an email, say, hey, my author is going to be in town during this time range for this book that's coming out. Do you want to do an event? Are you guys available? And then, you know, we try to decide, is that something that will be a good fit for us? Do we have the resources available? Will we have the space at that time? Will we have the staff at that? Just like all the kind of like logistical concerns. So I'd never heard of Dungeon Crawler Carl, right? And the publicist said, well, this is kind of a cult classic.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first things where I was like, okay, so we have a built-in audience. Because one of the hardest things about being a bookstore event planner is trying to get an audience for things, especially like if it's someone's, for instance, if this had not had an indie release and this was just like someone's debut, it's really hard to get an audience in for someone's debut fiction novel.
It's really hard.
Right? Because it's like, if it's nonfiction, you can kind of be like, okay, like Northwest Tree Association might want to come to the tree book event. But like fiction is so specific, so that can be kind of tough. But there were two things that told me that this was going to get an audience. The first one was it came out as it's kind of gained a cult following as an indie pub. And then here's the second thing that taught me that this might be a good thing, was she sent me this quote, which you'll see, from Felicia Day.
Yes.
And I'm of the internet epic, I guess, however you pronounce that word, era, where we were obsessed with Felicia Day. And I was like, I think if she's saying this and she's this into this, this might take off. I really had no idea. I was just like, I remember when we were all gay for Felicia Day. And between those two things, I was like, okay, we're gonna take a chance on this.
Plus he's local.
And he's local, which is always a humongous plus, because we always want to support local folks as much as we can. And then, bada bing, bada boom, 300 some people pre-ordered it and 150 people came. So it
was great.
That's really kind of that's one of the big benefits of having a indie release first and then being traditionally published. You're not like going out kind of into the void, just being like, hey, excuse me, my novel's really good, which it probably is, but it's like,
can we sell it?
Can we sell it?
Can we sell it? Can we get people to come? Fresh, creative, hilarious. I'm obsessed. Princess Donut is my queen. It says Felicia, actor, producer, and New York Times bestselling author Felicia Day. So, Princess Donut is also my queen.
I remember someone saying that it would be cool if she voice acted Princess Donut, because they're thinking about adapting it, which is really exciting.
I think so.
I don't know how likely that is, but I think it'd be pretty cool.
I think actually one of the first questions of the question period, who would be a better president, Carl or Donut? And the answer was overwhelmingly Princess Donut.
That's a really good question.
Would be the better.
Oh, she's my president for sure.
She is pretty great.
I think she should be mayor of Seattle.
Yeah.
So tonight we have, of course, Matt Dinniman here. He's in conversation with our other local author, Django Wexler, whose newest book, How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying, which is, sounds very cheery, right? They're both very funny people, and I'm going to let them take it away. Keep in mind that Matt has to go and catch a plane tonight, so you're not going to be able to probably do this as long as I'd want. So we're going to get going. All right, I'm out of the way. Here we go.
Right. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks, Wayne.
My name is Django Wexler, and I'm here to, facilitate and make it so it's not just Matt up here talking the whole time, I guess. Can people hear me? Can you hear me now? All right.
Eat the mic.
So we'll do a little bit of discussion, and then we'll take audience questions, so, save up your questions. So the one thing everyone wants to know, when is the next book coming out? Where's Book 7, Matt? What are you doing here? You're not at home writing.
So first off, go f*** yourself, John. I am working on Book 7 every day. It doesn't look like that because it doesn't look like it's my priority because I'm here doing this stuff. I just came back from Dragon Con and I'm about to fly to LA for something I'm not allowed to talk about, but it is Dungeon Crawler Carl related. But Book 7 is almost done. I will be out this year. I told Jeff I would deliver him the final, Jeff the narrator from Soundbit Theater, I would deliver him the final version on October 1st. And I don't see why that isn't possible. Not sure if that's actually going to happen, but it will be out sometime this year. Trying to keep it away from the election as possible. We're not going to talk about politics, but you're not supposed to release a book anywhere near an election.
It's hard to get any social media traction.
But we're going to probably do it anyway, because I don't want to keep you guys waiting.
Vote for Carl.
Vote for Donut.
Who would make the better president, Carl or Donut?
As long as you don't own a Cocker Spaniel, then I think Donut would make the better president.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the book because I feel like we've been hyping it for the last couple of sessions of this, episodes, I guess.
For the last couple of centuries.
But we haven't really talked about like what the book is actually about except for kind of surface level discussion. So Dungeon Crawler Carl is a really unique kind of book, and I think part of the reason it's such a cult classic and it really stands out in the realm of RPG and LitRPG specifically is because it is, more than anything, more than just being funny, it is existential horror comedy. And I think that's why it has such a huge cult following. And I actually will play this clip for you in a minute here. One of the questions that I asked during the question period was, how do you balance these elements of tragedy with genuine humor? And Matt had a really interesting answer about this series and the story, and he was saying, like, they're funny, but they are horror books. It is about the destruction of the world. It is about this kind of capitalist hellscape that people find themselves in, and it is about this idea that you know, in this dungeon, everyone is trying to survive. So not just Carl and Donut and all the other crawlers, but also the alien species that have been mutated into like dungeon creatures, right, for them to fight. The creatures
are trying to survive too.
And the bosses, everyone's trying to survive, and it's very, like, make no mistake, Matt is very funny. He's very funny, and he talks a lot about his writing process, and we'll play that as well for you so you can see it. But it is about making moral choices, and can you make moral choices when you're essentially a gladiator and you're trying to survive and you have a slender hope that maybe you can get the world back or save what's left of it if you just make it far enough into this dungeon. Mm-hmm. And for those of you that have read The Hunger Games and you have no frame of reference really for RPGs, it's kind of similar to The Hunger Games that's being broadcasted to the Capitol for entertainment, and people can buy loot boxes and they can, you know, they have followers. It's like social media. There's followers and people send better equipment to characters in the game that are more entertaining. So it incentivizes entertaining violence, and it's like, it's funny, but it's also a social critique, it's moral philosophy, it's humor, it's really grim, you know, violent things that are happening. And I think that's why these books are so good, because it's not like, oh, it's funny, or oh, it's this or whatever. It is a very unique take on a not very well-known genre, and I think it was really an incredible, it was like a masterstroke. So Ace Publishing, whoever picked this up at Ace Publishing, I think they're really gonna have a huge moneymaker, because I think that Matt Dinniman was saying that they had sold something like 900,000 audiobooks of Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Yes.
And
the audio, when he asked how many people in the audience had listened to the audio,
I would say like 90% of the people put their hand up.
Oh yeah, and people are super into it.
Oh, very into it.
They like have commentary on like the voices and the way different things are pronounced.
Oh,
and,
it was
like,
very fun.
People are passionate about that audiobook.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about picking the series up, I highly recommend it for those reasons, because I think it looks like it's packaged as like a funny video game book, but it really is much more than that. And Matt is very creative, he's very interesting, he's got a very existential perspective, and it's fun, but it's also deep. And because there's 6 books in already, and the first one was published at the end of August. The second one is coming out at the end of September. The third one is coming out at the end of October. You can actually order these if you want to through the university bookstore. They're going to have signed copies. So there are still signed copies of Dungeon Crawler Carl, and they're taking pre-orders for books 2 and 3, which will also be signed if you want them personalized. I'll put a link if anyone's interested.
It's gonna be fun. So
it's gonna be fun.
Give us a ring and we'll get it going for you.
And I think something else is that they only, from what I understand, they only bought the rights to the print hardcover, to the print book. So you can still buy the ebooks for like $5 each if you have an e-reader, and you can listen to them on Audible, the whole series.
Yeah.
But
which is apparently outstanding. I
think these are fun. You know, it's actually, speaking of that, I love how similar, can you hold this? They can see it.
Always.
So this is Orbit, this is Ace, but you can see how similar this kind of marketing is with this real like shiny pink if you hold it like this.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, so it's got the same kind of vibe. It's got the same really bright, almost video game kind of neon colors.
We love a magenta. You've heard me talk about this
magenta.
before. I'm obsessed with this. With this color palette.
Yeah, it's really good. It's a really good series.
I'm being hypnotized again by this. So I'm gonna put it back before I
but
lose the plot entirely.
But genuinely, this series is fantastic. The first 3 books are going to come out in very quick succession. I would be shocked if they didn't, or if they aren't in the process of signing for the rest of the series. Matt also said book 7 is almost done. It's very close to being finished.
He's planning to write 10.
There are going to be 10, and he's almost finished with book 7. So there's lots for you to read and or listen to, because actually Matt was really recommending the audiobook for reasons that we'll get into in a bit here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Speaking of things that are coming out about Dungeon Crawler Carl,
Yes.
one of the things that I was the most excited about, and it doesn't sound like there's any concrete plans for this yet or anything, but he's talking about making it, like adapting it into an RPG, like a tabletop.
Oh, yes. Okay.
With core mechanics being fame, so you can use the mechanic of like getting fans and pets. And my favorite thing about this, I shouldn't even say this, because if you end up playing it, it might be a spoiler, so I don't know.
Go say it. Tell them.
Is that the way he wants this set up is that the GM is not supposed to tell you what's about to happen.
Yeah.
They're supposed to like invite you guys over to the house, be like, okay, we're gonna do like our RPG night or like our board game night or whatever, and then be like, okay, pick an object in this room to use as a weapon. If you have a pet that you want to bring with you on an adventure, choose them now. It's a total surprise, because that's kind of how the book is. Like,
Dungeon Crawler Claire,
you're in
Dungeon Crawler Luna.
Exactly.
Off we go.
Luna would tear it up in the dungeon.
Okay, what would be our first weapon, though?
It's a good question.
What would be our weapon? The book? I don't know. Okay, well, what I have in hand that I normally...
I don't know, the ring light, I think, could be decent.
The ring light? The ring light? My cell phone? I don't know.
Yeah, because then you can blind them and then get in a couple...
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Good whacks. Yeah, I think I love that as a dynamic, like surprising your friends and loved ones with
hilarious
playing this game. I really hope they make it. I really hope they add that mechanic, and I would totally get my RPG group to play that. I think it would be a hoot. I mean, you'd all know what I was on about though, so it wouldn't be as much of a surprise.
But it would still be fun and hard.
Fun.
I think it would be fun and hard to play.
I bet. Because you're in extreme danger.
Peril, extreme peril for the entertainment of aliens.
Yeah. Major peril.
Major peril. Oh my god.
I'm gonna be in major peril today.
Yeah.
Moving on.
We are playing Warhammer 40k RPG tonight, and we are in major peril.
We're always in major
We're always in major peril.
There's no time we're not in major peril.
We're
in a little extra peril if we're me.
We're in more peril, more specifically in this situation.
We are. Well, we're still in the. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm so off the plot. I'll make a hand signal showing I've recognized that so Claire can cut.
Yeah, so something that I was really struck by when I started reading this series is you do a really good job of balancing the cruelty and the tragedy with things that are genuinely funny. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to know if you could talk a little bit more about that balancing act between, like, this is a really terrible thing that's happening to these characters, and yet it's fun and entertaining, and it never feels like it has the right balance of both.
So the question, if you haven't heard it, it's about the balance in Dungeon Crawler Carl between kind of the true horror, the existential horror, and the humor. And there's a scene pretty early on in the book where they fight the first boss. Her name's the Hoarder, and she's a scared woman. But they don't understand because she only speaks Spanish, and they haven't yet fixed the translation. And it's horrifying. But when you see the scene for the first time, there's humor elements added also, and that was a deliberate purpose. I wanted to make everyone, the dungeon is stupid. It's a game show. Everything about it is designed to be entertaining and humorous to the people watching the show. But Carl takes everything dead serious. He is 100% serious about everything that happens to him, and sometimes he'll joke around with Donut, who's also a funny character because she's a cat that learns how to talk and makes very direct observations, and she acts exactly like any other cat I've ever met. But make no mistakes, this is a horror novel. You know, people say it's funny and it's humorous, but that's not what this is. It's the story about the destruction of humans by like capitalistic evil corporations that are exploiting every possible resource they can. And we're always going to keep that light edge because, I had a previous book that I already mentioned, Kaiju Battlefield Surgeon, that's pretty horrific and there's not very much lightness, and I think it's funny, but a lot of people don't. And, you know, I wanted something that was more palatable to the average reader. Plus, you know, Donut is funny, but most of the humor comes from her just being herself. And a lot of the other humor is just from the TV show aspect of itself, just being stupid like it's supposed to be. It's a dumb show from their point of view. But the true horror is what's really happening underneath the surface. And that's kind of the balance I wanted to portray when I write it. And it's kind of a difficult balance because sometimes I'll go back and say, well, they shouldn't be making light of this scene, and vice versa, or like, this scene is a little too horrific, maybe we should lighten it up a little bit. And it's a very difficult way to write, but it's also so much fun for me. And it's the sort of thing I like to read. I enjoy that sort of dual storyline where like multiple things are happening at once, and you as the reader, sometimes you don't know how you're supposed to feel, so you just go with what comes most naturally. We have to laugh. If you ever met any combat veterans, that's that humor, that rough humor that a lot of them have, it's their coping mechanism. That book right there, How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying, it does the same thing, and that's one of the things I really appreciated about that book.
Yeah, it has a similar thing where Davi, the main character, is a little crazy, and she makes jokes constantly. She makes references which no one around her understands, and they all just kind of look at her blankly. And because she's been in this time loop, she doesn't take everything seriously, take anything seriously. But the key is that it's all that defense mechanism, right? It's this person who has been deeply damaged by traumatic events over a long period of time, kind of getting through and trying to retain some shred of sanity. And it's that kind of balance that gets there.
Something really interesting that Matt and Django were talking about during the question period is this idea. So for those of you who are writers or anyone who's interested in about how books get written, so Django was asking Matt if he was a pantser or a plotter. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, so pantsing means that you are a writer and you are kind of just like flying by the seat of your pants. You are making it up as you go along. There's no plan. You're letting the characters and the situations come to you. It is kind of like everything is just inspiration, your inspiration. And Matt will tell you all about that himself in this next clip. And Matt is a pantser. It's also, I like the term discovery writing a little bit better.
I've never heard that. That's a nice term.
It's a little less chaotic sounding.
Yeah.
So, and plotting is obviously you come up with an outline for your novel and you figure out exactly what's going to happen. Not everything, but most people who are plotters, they kind of figure out what happens at the beginning, what happens at the middle, what are the catalysts, what is the conflict, and usually what is the end. And most authors seem to be kind of a mix of pantsers and plotters. You want some basic outline of your story, but you also want to leave room for that inspiration to strike, because something that's entirely plotted, sometimes it gets a little boring and formulaic because you kind of have to work off a formula when you're just doing your plotting. Matt is entirely a pantser. He doesn't plot anything. He doesn't plot anything at all.
He said he sometimes doesn't know where a sentence is gonna end.
Yeah, he genuinely doesn't know where a sentence is gonna end. And he also, I'll link it, he has a Patreon. So there's a free element. I think it's like $3. There's nothing more, none of the tiers are more than $5. But you can join the Patreon, and he has blog posts and he lets people vote about what they want to happen in the story. And so I think it's part of why this series is so fun. I think part of because I read a lot of books for work and for fun, and I feel like I'm analyzing them more than you would if you were just reading for fun, but I can generally tell where a story is going, and it's not a bad thing. I like to try and figure things out. And something that's really interesting and unique about this series is like you genuinely have no clue what's happening. Like I was like, I was going through the story and the pages, at the end of the book, there weren't many left. And I was like, how the heck is this gonna get wrapped up? Like how is he gonna, truly? And Matt talks about how he thinks that like for him, and I don't think many authors can do this well. I think he's honestly pretty unique in this regard, is he comes up with these crazy situations and he just kind of is like, and he just figures it out. And he was saying too that on his Patreon, he was like, people never pick the thing that he expects. And then he's like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get out of this? Yeah. So it's almost like improv writing. If you've ever been to like an improv comedy show and the audience is like giving prompts or they pull a scene out of a hat, that's kind of what this book is. This is part of the charm, the magic of this particular series. That shouldn't work. That doesn't work. Poorly plotted books are usually just, I'm sorry, they're kind of garbage. They're bad because there are certain plot conventions that you follow for a reason, for a powerful story. But Matt, he's just figured out the formula, or either that, or he has that
je ne sais quoi.
Je ne sais quoi. He can just do it.
It just has a spark of life in it.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why people are so passionate about it. Yeah. Because a lot of these people have been literally part of making this happen.
Yes.
Which is incredibly cool. You just rarely get that.
It was very fun.
I think it's really neat.
Well, it was interesting because Django Wexler was saying he was like, I don't know how you do this. Because he was like, I cannot do this. He's like, I tried to do that once and it took me 5 years of writing and I didn't finish it because it's so open. It's kind of like if you are leaving the house and you have a destination in mind and you have errands that you want to do. So you're like, I need to end up at the grocery store, but before I go there, I want to stop at the post office. I might go do this. I might go do that. I need to get my nails done. And you're kind of like, maybe you deviate from that schedule, but you end up where you want it to be. But like Matt, it's kind of like Matt's like, oh, I have stuff I need to do today. You leave the house and that's it. You don't have any destination. You haven't figured anything out. All you know is that you have to, at some point end up somewhere
back home
eventually.
But you're basically skateboarding out of your house and grabbing onto the back of a pickup truck like Marty McFly. Yes. And then just like seeing what happens.
And hoping that you get the things done that you kind of have forgotten that you needed to do.
But he's a really freaking good writer, so he makes it happen.
He makes it work. He makes it happen. And it's a lot of fun. Pantsing versus plotting. Yeah. So here, we'll show you what they have to say about it.
So the thing that's always amazed me about these books is that you write these without planning them in advance. You're doing this by the seat of your pants, and that's astonishing given how well they hang together. My question is, was there ever a moment where you said to yourself, 18 levels? Like, oh my god, this is too many. Is that why we skipped one?
So I do have a few regrets, and he's right. I am what's called a pantser. A pantser is a guy who basically makes it up as he goes along. I have no plan when I'm writing. Sometimes I don't even know how the sentence is going to end. I rewrite scenes multiple times, and I will kill characters off and see if that scene's better or worse if that character is killed in it. And don't write if you're a writer, do not write like this. This is a terrible thing. But there are a few things I do regret, and 18 floors now seems like a lot to me. If I were to say write a television series, I would make it less than 18. But it's all gonna work out. We're gonna have about 10 books total. We'll see what happens. I'm having the time of my life pantsing. A lot of writers, they outline. Do you outline?
Yeah, I'm the exact opposite. I'm like an obsessive planner. So to me, this seems like black magic. I used to write this way, and it took me 5 years to write a book.
So I'm not going to be as insulting towards plotters as I was about to be. But
It's fine.
no, I personally believe like the magic is found when you surprise yourself. When you plot a book out, and if it works out, that's great. But a lot of people, when they plot out their book, they're sitting down and they plot it out over the course of a couple days. And so their brain that exists in that period over the couple of days, and we can talk about this all night, and we're not going to, is the brain that kind of steers the entire book. And I like the idea of, when I'm happy, I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm hungry, I'm irritated because my dogs won't shut up, sort of thing. Wherever my brain is at the moment, dictating the story at that moment. If I was at a certain coffee shop that day, the story would be veered off in a completely different direction than it would be if I was at another coffee shop. I enjoy that chaos. I enjoy writing myself into a corner. I enjoy the idea of letting the people on my Patreon vote for things that happen without knowing how the heck I'm going to get myself out of it.
Well, and the thing that always impresses me is how well it hangs together in the end.
Okay.
Homeric poetry.
Let's bring it way back.
Okay.
Way back.
Let's take it way past.
Audiobooks. We're going to talk a little bit about audiobooks and why we think, and the authors think, that these are a really important way to experience stories. So, maybe not so much anymore, but there definitely used to be a lot of snobbery around audiobooks and whether or not they were reading. And listening to an audiobook is absolutely reading. You are absolutely consuming that story and the way it was intended to be told. And it doesn't really help with like reading comprehension or spelling comprehension, but you are still experiencing that story in the way that it was intended for you to be experienced. And Travis Baldree and Matt Dinniman both talk about audiobooks and how they write for audio. Mm-hmm. And we'll let you, so we actually have a leftover part of the interview from Travis's interview last week. We just didn't really have anywhere to put it. It didn't really flow with the rest of the conversation, but we're gonna put it here and also kind of juxtapose it with what Matt is talking about for audiobooks. But audiobooks are really important. They're important ways to experience stories. And if you are not really interested in audiobooks or you haven't listened to them much, I highly encourage you, if you're interested in Legends and Lattes, or if you're interested in Dungeon Crawler Carl, to download the audiobook, listen to the audiobook, because I think it will really change your perspective on audiobooks. And if you already love them, these are two series that were written specifically to be experienced as audiobooks.
Or like with the audiobook in mind.
With the audiobook in mind. And something that Travis was talking about is that, and this is true, for thousands of years, humans were oral storytellers. That is how people experience stories. And these stories were passed down from generation to generation. And famously, especially for fairy tales, the Brothers Grimm were going around and collecting them and writing them down, and they were going to all these different parts of Europe and preserving these oral traditions of storytelling. Mm-hmm. And it's just interesting that there has been such a shift in modern times, because we have more literate people now than we ever have at any point in history. But it was not common to be educated enough to read. So it's a funny shift, because I feel like for most of human history, we experience stories as a community mm-hmm. story experience, and now reading has become very solitary, right? It's a thing that you do with a book on your own time. And I really encourage people to listen to audiobooks. And actually, let's listen to what Matt and Travis have to say about audiobooks, and then we'll come back.
You've written a lot of books. Is this the only one that has LitRPG game element stuff in it?
No, my first LitRPG...
I admit I have not read any
that's
other
okay.
than the DCC.
My first LitRPG came out in 2017, and it's called Dominion of Blades. Thank you. And there's a sequel to it called The Hobgoblin Riot. And I will finish, it's not done, the series isn't done, I ended on a cliffhanger too.
No.
I will finish it, my plan was to have it done already, but unfortunately, another certain book series kind of took over my life. And in addition to that, I also have a standalone novel. That's a standalone, and there's not going to be a sequel, but it's in the Dominion of Blades universe, called Kaiju Battlefield Surgeon, which is a horror novel about a man who lost a child.
But, so do those have sort of stats and game stuff?
They actually probably a little thicker with the stats than, if it's interesting with LitRPG is, you read a LitRPG and you look when the year it was first published, anything that was like in the 20 teens, they tend to have way more stats in them. Like they'll have pages and pages and pages of stats. But quick poll here, who here who's read Dungeon Crawler Carl actually listened to the audiobook? See, the audiobook is by far, by the way, I just found out yesterday we've sold 900,000 copies of the audiobook so far. But anyway, if you've ever listened to a LitRPG audiobook that has more than one page of even one page of stuff, it's you just want to like rip your ears out. And people have like found new ways to fix that, like they'll have it as its own chapter so you can skip it if you want. But more commonly, people are just not putting them as much in books. Even in Dungeon Crawler Carl itself, I've toned down some of the stats because I kind of glaze over in the first book a little bit.
Over time with Legends and Lattes, and I think there's a couple things that really stand out. One is the characters.
Yeah.
One is kind of the warmth of the setting. And one is that when they hear you either talk about it in person or they hear the audiobook, like they can really like connect to your authorial voice.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is sort of an audiobook.
Well, I think that like text is an imperfect translation of a story delivered by audio. Like all stories used to be audio. Text is just a way of trying to hint at what it would sound like if somebody said it out loud. That's what's a comma. It's just telling you needed a pause. What's an exclamation mark? All these things are instructions for how you would have said it out loud so that you can replicate that in your head. So the closer you can get, in my mind, to what would sound good said out loud, the better the prose reads in your head too.
Yeah.
I've never thought about it that way. That's really cool.
So interesting. Yeah.
I think that most of my favorite books, if you read them out loud, they sound good. You can tell that the author knows what words sound like strung together. They know what the sentence sounds like. They care about the cadence. They care about the beat. They care about these consonants next to each other are really awkward to say, so I'm not going to put them there.
Yeah.
And I think so. I think it's kind of a cheat to be an audiobook narrator.
Did you read stuff aloud as you wrote to like check and see?
I don't have to anymore. A thing that happens after reading thousands of hours of stuff out loud is that your interior voice is very, very, very accurate. So I know what it sounds like before I write it, which is again kind of a cheat.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people, I think there's a lot of authors that have that developed interior voice. I mean, everybody, it's like people with who can't picture things. And people who can picture them very clearly. Some people have a really clear audio voice in their brains, and I think that that's really apparent in their writing often. And then people who don't, who actually do read it out loud afterward. I know authors who do this. They've got to read all the dialogue out loud to make sure that it sounds right, and you can tell it pays off.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess we are kind of spoken storytellers as human beings before we are textual storytellers.
Well, and theoretic, I mean, are you hearing voices in your head for a character? Does they sound gravelly? When somebody says a character sounds gravelly, do you hear their gravelly voice in your head? Or does that just blow right through? I mean, there's some audio component in our minds that functions at varying degrees of effectiveness, but it's there.
Yeah.
I have something to say about audiobooks, and I'm gonna say it right now.
Go, say
No
it.
one can stop me.
Tell us.
Not even
Princess Donut.
Princess Donut can stop me. A lot of folks get audiobooks via Audible.
Yeah.
Another great option that not that many people know about is Libro FM.
Okay.
We are not sponsored by Libro FM, but if they do want to hit us up. No, it's an audiobook service that allows you to buy things through independent bookstores.
Yes.
So instead of having the money you pay for audiobooks go to Amazon, you can have it go to your local store, which just kind of puts that money back into your community, which is pretty cool. And it has a lot of the same stuff. I honestly don't know a side-by-side comparison of those two services, so I don't know like how that lines up, but I do know that like it's kind of a good option.
Yeah, Libro FM is great. I actually do use Audible also.
There's nothing wrong with using Audible. You gotta use Audible sometimes.
Well, part of the reason I like Audible is because I've actually had a Kindle since the second generation. I've had one for a really long time, and I love that you can sync the book and listen to it. So cool. Like on my lunch break at work, I have the Kindle app on my phone and I can read. And then if I get home and I want to do sewing or some chore, I'm cleaning and I want to listen to it, the device will actually jump ahead to where I was in the book. It'll be like, hey, you're at a different location. Do you want to pick it up here? So it's very, it's very
actually
convenient.
That's pretty handy.
Technology.
Yeah, I also use the Libby app, which allows
Libby
you to
is
connect
great.
your public library online. Which
Libby's great.
I'm obsessed with that app. I will talk about Libby constantly. Someone recommends me a book, and I'm like, let me open the library app.
Yeah, Libby, Libro FM, Audible.
Lots of great ways.
Lots of great ways to listen to audiobooks. So if you're considering reading Legends and Lattes, or you want to experience Dungeon Crawler Carl, the audio versions are also fantastic and well worth your time to listen to.
Super worth it. I mean, it kind of shows you from a different angle and a very intentionally crafted angle.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for Claire and Milo Talk About Books, episode 4. So we will see you next week.
We'll see you next time. Good luck, dungeon crawlers.
Bye. That was perfect.
Nice.
We did it.